Hey guys, October 28th, 2025, here with your after hours recap. So, let's just, call it what it is. Today was Nvidia's day, a new all-time closing high. And with that, it did take some semiconductors with it. AVGO, a new all-time closing high, which I thought, was very nice today. And the one that I did buy, which is TSM, which is also pushing up in after hours. But effectively, Nvidia had a conference today, and they started mentioning everybody. They were talking about quantum, they were talking about Disney, they were talking about all their partners and the robots and everything they were doing. And with it, Nvidia was just absolutely flying, and we did close at $201, and here we are almost at 205 in after hours. So as you can see, it is just an Nvidia market. I did go ahead and trim a little bit of mags off the table. Obviously, this is pushing even a little bit higher in after hours, but it is just, I start to see a move like this. You get a couple of these little gap ups. For me, I'm just not going to kind of look that gift in the face. I'm going to take some of my money off the table. But ultimately, the market is being led by Magnificent Seven companies. Apple's still acting well. Meta still acting well going into earnings. Microsoft, they have a new and renewed pact. Not a letter of intent, not a contract, not anything. They just spit on their hand. They gave a nice little firm handshake with Sam Altman. And there you go. Now they've got a new pact. And Microsoft was off to the races. It makes me chuckle kind of when I say that, because just the absurdity of a pact, not some letter of intent, not even some contract, not even an IOU. Well, let's just use the word pact. It is what it is, the backdoor deal. But anyway, kind of makes me chuckle. But here we are, Microsoft, nice little gap up today, up 2%. But really, again, the star of the show was indeed Nvidia, and $205. It's pretty incredible to see this thing up 5% plus. I did add a small piece more to my Tesla, and this is right at effectively we had closing 459.46. Today, 460.55. So it is the highest close in the entire formation since the April lows. I mean, we are so close to an all-time high. What I do want to say, though, kind of in that regard, is the market at any moment can start to give some nasty pulls. And I think it's just kind of good to be aware of, maybe not taking too much exposure here. In case the market does give that kind of pull. But if you have a clean setup and you've got a tight area of risk, similar to TSM, I don't see a reason to not go ahead and get involved. And obviously this thing is closing well and also pushing in after hours. So I don't see a reason why you can't take, one of the leading semiconductors and buy it trying to come out of this consolidation. And then on the flip side of that, speculative stocks just continue to get their ass kicked. OKLO, bit of an unwind today, not that terrible, but some people will look at this as a head and shoulders pattern where you've got your left shoulder, you've got your right shoulder, you have got your head, and some people will kind of view that as that. I don't see that there's anything wrong with viewing OKLO in that manner. And really, when you just look at speculative, again, IONQ was acting weak for the most part today. Pretty big unwind, 9%. Rigetti, which I have a short on, really nice unwind. And then IREN, which I did get stopped out right at this, right at yesterday's highs, and then I re-put it back on when we started to reject yesterday's highs, and then a really nice clean unwind all day long. And I kind of thought that this is what would happen when I covered my Rigetti last week. When I covered UAMY, I really thought we would get a multiple day rally, in some of this speculative stuff, and that's exactly what we got. And then I thought we would start to unwind back to those lows, and that is kind of like the next step in where I see some of these speculative names going. And then right at the end of the day too, Bitcoin got its teeth kicked in, and Ethereum, same deal, ass kicked right at the end of the day. Not a whole lot here until we start to live above the 50 simple moving average. So not much to say there. On a positive note, CCJ got an $80 billion contract with the United States government. This one will forever eat me alive. One, because I did own this thing on 9.9 and I let it go on 10.10 when it just really wasn't doing anything. And I didn't feel too bad about it because of the price action here. And I was just like, I'm glad I let it go. And then to see this thing now well over $100, kind of eats me up inside, because I used to have, like a 20 and change average, like a $24 average on 60,000 shares. So, kind of looking at this thing and being like, boy, I had a really awesome thesis for what I thought nuclear names and really nuclear in particular, the theme was going to be, and just kind of knowing that, I left a $5 million winner out on the table. And instead, I took a gap down when they diluted to buy some Honeywell. So they did an offering. They bought the plant from Honeywell, and I lost $250,000 instead of being up $5 million. So sometimes, that just kind of eats me alive every time I look at this name. But here we are. The thesis is playing out. The government's now involved. Nuclear is still a big deal. You need it to really power the world. The only thing with the nuclear thesis is, it takes some time and there's a lot of red tape to build a nuclear facility, but it doesn't really matter. Cameco is like the, they are the second largest producer of uranium and enriched uranium next to Kazatomprom. But anyway, I digress. Really, really nice move in Cameco today. Awesome move in, I noticed a little bit of UEC going a bit higher as well. So that's nice to see right off of the 50-day on a pickup in volume, maybe higher in time for this name as well. But ultimately, the market is speculative names ass kicked, and quality stocks higher. There was, I thought, Wayfair, which was a little bit interesting, gaps up on earnings. Really, really big pickup in volume. Definitely a stage 2 uptrend. Very nice to see. I mean, this was a awesome move higher, and then you just digested for a few weeks, and then you gapped up on earnings. That is exactly what you want to see. SOFI was another one that caught my attention today on earnings. At first, I was like, even in the room, I was like, you know what? Let's just kind of leave this thing alone for a moment. I want to see, it bounce on its own without me really trying to cherry pick a bottom. And what did this thing do? It just started to turn around right on its own. And sure enough, off to the races all day long. So SoFi, really nice. Wayfair, really nice. Semiconductors, fantastic. AVGO, new all-time closing high. Nvidia, obviously a new all-time high. And TSM, which is the one I bought today, very, very nice. I did let go of Oracle. There is absolutely no reason that our stock market is ripping the way it is, and Oracle has back-to-back red days. That's just kind of unacceptable in my opinion, and I just let this thing go. I'm not going to deal with the headache of owning a piece of shit. We will just, be super frank with it. It's exactly what it is. It's acting like crap, so I'm not going to own it while it's acting that poor. Tesla, like I said, I did add a small piece today with low of day as my stop on my ad. Rocket Lab, which I still own, really nothing to do with it here until we can take out a prior day high. And today, tried to squirt above, but then just nothing and failed from there. Rigetti, I am short, and this one is working well. MAGS ETF, I trimmed off a piece, and it is also trying to go higher with obviously Nvidia and these Magnificent Seven stocks. IREN, I am short, and it's working well. Dell, I took off another piece today into this left side peak, so we will just kind of let it work from there. BABA, down a bit, and we'll just kind of leave the low of the day that I bought it, so effectively using the 20 simple moving average as my guide. And ARC, a little bit odd, closing on those lows, but ultimately not that big a deal. We still want to continue to kind of churn through some of these earnings and see how things are holding up. Gold still coming under a little bit of pressure. Crude oil stocks not doing anything, super fantastic here. They're just kind of hanging out after their most recent move. And like I said, the cryptos, not that incredible. So we'll just continue to take it one day at a time. I am getting a little bit weary of buying any kind of big strength here. At some point, the market is going to have a pullback. I don't know if it's going to be a runaway train, in which case, I've got some stocks, right? I've got a Dell, I've got a Baba, I've got, a Tesla and a TSM. So I've got some semiconductors, I've got some, robots with Tesla, and I've got the MAGS ETF to kind of cover, the stocks that are actually carrying the market higher. But we do have some big earnings this week. So it will be good to just be patient, let those names report, and then we'll gauge the reaction from there. Like I said, SOFI, you're selling off at first and then you're ripping right back. That is absolutely awesome price action. And then on the flip side of that, the speculative stocks coming under pressure, which is exactly what I thought into last week. Oh, and finally, my least favorite name in the stock market, MSTR, the one that I'm kind of kicking myself for not reshorting on the 7th. Is just absolutely still fading and looks horrendous. Won't be too surprised if we are, $230 here pretty soon. And I don't know if that's going to mess with sentiment, when cryptos start to come down. I don't know if that is going to mess with sentiment. And finally, the cybersecurity stocks continue to act pretty well. CrowdStrike, really nice move out today. Zscaler still hanging in there. Nice new all-time closing high. And on the flip side of that, a Rubrik, not so fantastic. So you kind of know which ones to own and which ones to just leave alone pretty much in every group. So hopefully you guys have all had a pretty good trading day, and I will see you guys bright and early in the morning. Cheers.